You won't believe these disturbing beauty trends throughout history. During the Renaissance, having paler skin was considered more beautiful, so women would have leeches suck their blood to make them look more pale. They would find leeches in the forest and let them suck their blood by placing them on different parts of the body, usually the ears, which is obviously very painful. This trend came from the belief that wealthier people didn't have to work outside so they couldn't get tanned. So people began associating paler skin with higher social status. But this next one might even be worse, because men used to rub pigeon droppings on their heads to cure baldness. In ancient Greece, men used a mixture of cumin, horseradish, and pigeon droppings on their head when they were balding. There have been similar practices in ancient Egypt, even though there's no proof that it actually works. Another beauty trend was big watery eyes. So Victorian women would put deadly nightshade in their eyes to dilate them. It was thought that this would make them look more fragile, emotional, and feminine. And even though it would literally cause blindness, people still did it. And in the 19th century, many women broke their ribs to wear corsets. According to old x-rays, women who wore corsets every day often broke their rib cages, displaced their organs, and caused many digestive issues. Let me know if I should make a part 2 and follow for more.
Imagine losing not one but two of your babies after leaving them with your mother. This is what happened to Kayla Nix, who lost her 16-month-old son Ezra when she left him in the care of her 65-year-old mother Tracy. On December 2021, Tracy, who was Ezra's grandmother, was left to babysit, but she fell asleep and Ezra managed to get out of the house and drowned in a pond. During Ezra's passing, Kayla was pregnant with Uriel and she looked forward to having her daughter after tragically losing her son. Now, when Uriel was 7 months old, Kayla decided to give her mother a second chance and babysit her. On November 22nd, Tracy was babysitting Uriel and she took her out for lunch with her friends, but then when she came back home, she forgot Uriel in the car. The temperature was around the 90s and Uriel was left there for hours. It wasn't until one of her other grandchildren arrived that she remembered she left Uriel in the car, but at this point, it was too late. Uriel passed away 11 months after her 16-month-old brother. I can't even imagine how devastated Kayla must have been losing both of her babies, and it was all her mother's fault. Tracy was charged with aggravated manslaughter, and Kayla hopes that her babies get justice and that her mother is put in prison. She faces 12 to 30 years in prison, and apparently she's devastated about this whole situation, and she says that she simply just forgot. What do you guys think about this? Maybe she's developing some sort of dementia. I don't know.
Disturbing facts about the Titanic you didn't know. Now, we all know the Titanic hit an iceberg in the middle of the night and sank. But did you know while the ship was sinking, the captain sent emergency signals that got picked up by two ships, the SS California, who was only around an hour away, and the RMS Carpathia, who was a few hours away. But for some reason, the Carpathia was the one to get there first and was able to save the passengers. Unfortunately, around 1,000 people ended up losing their lives. But if the California had responded to the emergency call, they most likely would have gotten there sooner and been able to save almost everyone. And some people blame the captain of the California for all the death that happened on the Titanic. What do you think?
This nurse had a baby with his patient who was in a vegetative state. In 2018, a patient that was in a vegetative state at this long-term care facility in Phoenix gave birth to a baby boy. Hacienda Healthcare is a nursing home for patients with disabilities, and in this case, this woman was not able to speak or move. And this woman, who has not been identified, has been in this facility for over 14 years. Just like any other day, a nurse was assigned to this patient, and when she walked into her room to change her clothes, she noticed that the woman was moaning in pain, and then she didn't know she was pregnant until she suddenly gave birth. Obviously, all the nurses were extremely shocked and wondered who would do this to someone who's so vulnerable. Police then ordered all male workers to provide a DNA sample, and that's when 36-year-old Nathan Sutherland was a match with the baby's DNA. Police later found out that Nathan was responsible for taking care of this woman at the time that she was assaulted, and he was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Papa Smurf is actually the devil. Hello, I am a Smurf. Did you know that Gargamel was based on a real person? In the 12th century, he was born in Spain to a very poor family. Unable to care for him, they left him in a basket in front of a convent church. He was raised to become a priest, but as the years went by, all the men who lived in the church with him passed away. Gargamel became depressed and got a cat, which he named Azrael after a fallen angel. The Smurfs are believed to be based on the 7 deadly sins. Consider this: Greedy Smurf represents greed, Granny Smurf represents envy and pride, Lazy Smurf signifies sloth, Grouchy Smurf embodies wrath, Vanity Smurf represents vanity, Hefty Smurf represents gluttony, and Smurfette represents lust. Not only do they symbolize the 7 deadly sins, but Papa Smurf stands out by being the only one dressed in red, a color associated with the devil. Consequently, he is considered the devilish character among the Smurfs. The Smurfs are purportedly attempting to bring evil to humanity, while Gargamel is portrayed as the protector of the world against our malevolent intentions. If you want to uncover more hidden truths about the characters, please follow my account.
Y'all, this photo of Tina Turner hanging off the side of the Eiffel Tower in her stiletto heels is 100% real and not altered in any way, and I'm just dying to talk about it. These photos were taken in 1989 for Tina Turner's album shoot for her album Foreign Affairs when Tina was just around 50 years old. Now, many people have speculated if maybe there is a harness and wires edited out of these photos, but according to the photographer Peter Lindbergh, there was absolutely no safety precautions taken this day. He recalled that during the shoot, he had offered Tina to let her put her high heels on after she was done climbing the tower. He then said that she turned to him and said, "You must be kidding," and then proceeded to climb the Eiffel Tower in her stiletto heels like a true icon would. Peter recalls Tina as being one of the most interesting people he had ever met. Meanwhile, I am 29 and I get anxiety leaving my house.
This bank worker murdered her customers after stealing money from their family. On July 2018, 52-year-old Cynthia and her son, 22-year-old Sean, were found murdered in their apartment in Florida. The investigation quickly pointed at 25-year-old Amelia Bissoon, who worked at Chase Bank in downtown Orlando. Cynthia's 65-year-old father, who suffered from dementia, was a regular at Chase Bank, and he usually dealt with Amelia. Amelia was the one who helped the man with his banking needs. And on March of that year, Amelia wrote a $50,000 check from the elderly man's account, which was supposed to go to his grandson's account, Sean. But instead, Amelia and her husband, 28-year-old Joshua, took this money and put it in their account. A few months later, Cynthia went to the bank with her son Sean and asked why these checks were not deposited into his account after her father said that the funds should be there. Before the family could investigate, Joshua went to Cynthia's home and took her life and her son's life. At first, they denied having anything to do with the murders, but after some time, Amelia turned on her husband and he was sentenced to life in prison. On the other hand, Amelia was only charged with theft and she got 3 years in jail.
In the moonlight, my honey, I know is a dog.
This is a story I am sure will be removed, so if you're watching this, buckle up. The year is 2009 in Woodstock, Illinois, and a man with the name of Kyle Morgan had just got done luring a homeless guy into his apartment after he promised him food, warmth, and something to drink. Being that it was in the middle of an Illinois winter, the homeless man could not pass it up. A couple weeks later, maintenance was called to Kyle's apartment after a foul odor was coming from it. They knocked, no response, and then used the master key to go inside. Upon entering, the sour smell of death smacked each of them in their face, and they saw the homeless man lying on the ground. But that wasn't it. He was slapped anywhere between 20 and 30 times. He had the number 666 carved into his forehead, as well as Uno reverse cards showing the same numbers laying on his chest, and throughout the entire apartment was satanic writings written in the victim's blood. Kyle fled but was found multiple states away after a traffic incident that led to a high-speed chase, him hitting 2 people in the process, and then detained. He pled guilty but mentally ill and only received 30 years in prison. With that being said, he's going to be released in less than 20 years.
Parents of murdered water polo coach Lily James are suing St Andrew's Cathedral School for gross negligence and breach of its duty of care to her as an employee. The 21-year-old was killed in the school bathroom on October 25th by colleague and former student Paul Tyson, 24. Lily was returning sports equipment from a training session at around 7 p.m. when Paul followed her into the bathroom and killed her. Her parents are seeking legal advice about pursuing the school for compensation and to establish how Paul Tyson was able to kill their daughter inside the school. A significant part of the legal action will center on the lack of nighttime security at the $40,000 a year campus. Lily's body was not discovered until midnight, 5 hours later, when Paul called 000 to tell the authorities of what he had done. He then took his own life. It's understood that Lily and Paul had dated briefly in the weeks before her death. Their pair split up about a fortnight before she was killed.
Oh no. No, 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 silly. To dry it. But it exploded. And they were both found dead.
So this man over here decided to transition into a woman so that he can avoid going to a man's prison. If for some reason you don't think this is messed up, I don't know what to tell you. In 2016 and 2019, a 31-year-old Adam Graham, who was first a man, attacked and AR'd 2 women. Adam claimed to have gender issues since the age of 4, but he only started transitioning in 2020 after he was charged. He changed his name from Adam to Isla, and now he's serving time in a women's prison in Scotland. So you're telling me that a man who was charged and found guilty of the RAPE of 2 women was put in a facility filled with women? To me, it's just alarming how no one thought that this would be a safety concern for a woman, especially because of what he was charged with. Someone make it make sense.
Kiss concerts are legendary, but perhaps the most special gig of all was the time that Kiss played a Michigan high school homecoming dance. Yes, that actually happened. The obvious question is, what? Okay, so in 1974, the Cadillac High School football team had a terrible start to their year. Coaches were looking for a way to get their team to loosen up, so they started playing rock music before and during workouts. Kiss was their soundtrack. The coaches wind up getting in touch with the band, and Kiss is so excited to hear about all this. P.S. The team ends up winning the rest of their games that year, which, wouldn't you if you were listening to Kiss while you were working out? I would win the football games and I don't even know how to throw a football. So as a thank you and a promotional stunt for their Kiss Alive album, the group agrees to visit the school and the town. When the time came, the group played the school's high school gym, and this building was not designed to withstand the likes of a Kiss pyrotechnic show. They ended up having to open up all of the windows, and residents as far away as like 2 miles claimed that they could hear the concert. The only thing that Kiss didn't do that they would have done at a normal show, no fake blood. And on that note,
do you know the dark truth behind the Teletubbies? We've always known that the 4 characters in the series are always smiling, but the truth behind Teletubbies will leave you speechless. In reality, the cartoon is based on a children's psychiatric institute in Bulgaria in the 50s. Each of these children was abused on a daily basis. The guards locked them in dark, cold rooms and even forgot to feed them. The 4 Teletubbies characters actually all died on the same day. Their faces were deformed due to the lack of food and getting beaten regularly. They were even kept in isolation, which led the children to dance and sing by themselves, even though there was no music at all. They occupied themselves as best they could. Because of the cold, Tinky Winky's skin turned purple. Lala, on the other hand, was a real ray of sunshine. She was literally the only child who, despite all her daily mistreatment and abuse, kept smiling. She constantly tried to reassure her other friends that things would eventually get better. Unfortunately, they all died. The character of Poe is itself taken from the full name Polina. One night, drunken guards threw her into the fire as she slept. Polina woke up the next morning with her body partially burned. The color red, therefore, refers to the flames into which she was thrown. Finally, as for the child who inspired Dipsy's character, he was a little boy who was constantly ill. He used to throw up what little food he was given. Green therefore refers to sickness and vomiting. And the sun we see in the cartoon is actually a metaphor for the guardians the children must constantly obey. The only source of comfort for this group of children was the television, which was always on. Except that one day, they heard the director of the institute say he was going to remove it because of the cost of electricity. The 4 friends quickly panicked. When the guards returned home at night, the 4 children went into the office and each stole a small television. Unfortunately, they quickly lost their way, as they had no idea where they were going to hide them. So they decided to hide the televisions in their own stomachs. The next morning, when the guards arrived at the institute, the children were crying, as usual. But this time, all 4 of them were lying in the middle of the room. Their stomachs were open and blood was running all over the room. However, their eyes were wide open, and they were grinning from ear to ear. These darker origins would explain why Teletubbies have been banned in some countries. Share this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to not miss the next story.
know anything about it, so I ran with it.
Initially, all of their explanations made sense, but now she thinks this may be concrete mix and not her mom. Keandra says her aunt was recently cremated by a different funeral home, and there is a noticeable difference between the two sets of remains.
It's like I got, like, dirty beach sand in one and ashes in another.
This is another story that just shows you how the owners of the Return to Nature funeral home treated their clients. Keandra used Return to Nature in 2019 for her mother's services, and she says it took them over a month to cremate her mother and give her ashes back. She was charged an extra fee, and they said it was because her mother was overweight and took longer to cook. Who says something like that?
She says it took them nearly a month to cremate her mother. When they finally said they had, they charged her an extra fee.
He explained that my mom was overweight and that it took them longer to cook.
Unfortunately, the FBI hasn't confirmed yet if her mother was inside the building, but it's looking like she was. Keandra got a tattoo with her mother's ashes, which is usually a safe procedure, but she got a gnarly infection afterwards, and now she's thinking that what she received was definitely concrete.
He was in a swing just like this one. Authorities also believe that the mother was pushing this young boy all through the night. Friday morning at the usually quiet Willis Memorial Park was anything but normal.
I just seen a bunch of cops, bunch of police.
But when Scott Blackburn, a father of a young boy who lives behind the park, found out what happened,
I don't even know how to process that, you know?
He couldn't believe it.
It's just sad. It's the only word I can think of.
Just before 7 a.m., officers got a call about a woman who had been pushing her toddler on the swing for an unusually long period of time.
And we think she was there as of yesterday. We don't know if she ever left during the night. It doesn't appear that she did.
Immediately, officers realized the 3-year-old boy was deceased with no obvious signs of trauma. He was transported to the chief medical examiner's office in Baltimore to determine the cause of death. The woman, meanwhile, 24 years old, and the boy's mother, answered a few questions before being taken to the Charles County Regional Medical Center for evaluation.
It's a terribly sad case. I know it was hard for the officers to go there and see that.
Gerald Lyles can understand why. As a father of a 5-year-old girl, his heart breaks for the young boy.
Hearing about that really brings tears to my eyes because, you know, he was young.
Now, charges in this case are pending. Authorities aren't saying much about the mother, only that she is not from this area but may have come here recently. Officials are asking anyone, family, friends, anyone with information about this case to...
When this young mother was rushed to hospital, the horrific truth of what had been happening to her would start to unfold. Tragically, it was too late. Chloe Holland was a 23-year-old mother from Southsea in Portsmouth. Earlier this year, her life would come to a tragic end after a series of shocking events. As you can see, Chloe was a natural beauty. She was an energetic, fun-loving girl with a great sense of humour. She enjoyed spending time with friends and family and loved her 3-year-old son. Chloe was in a relationship with 26-year-old Mark Masterson. Throughout their relationship, he would psychologically and physically abuse her. He started off by isolating her from family and friends, and gradually his abuse got worse. He was incredibly controlling and would belittle her and tell her to harm herself and unalive herself. On one occasion, he even handed her a knife. He controlled the clothes that she would wear, and he also tracked her phone so she felt unable to get away from him. He would regularly beat Chloe with a dumbbell and give her black eyes. At a travel lodge, he beat Chloe while shouting, "Say goodbye to your son." On the 30th of January this year, he forced Chloe to steal a car with him. After crashing the car, he made Chloe use a stolen bank card from inside of the car so that he wouldn't be caught on CCTV. Mark's abuse understandably caused Chloe's mental health to plummet. She felt like her life was ruined and she just had no escape from the torture. She became withdrawn, isolated, and unable to eat. In February, Chloe's mum received a phone call that no mum ever wants to receive. She was told something had happened to Chloe and to get to the hospital. Chloe had tried to take her own life. Her heart had stopped and her brain had been starved of oxygen. The PCSO who found her was a paramedic and was able to keep her alive until they rushed her to hospital. When her mum got there, she was attached to a ventilator. The following day, the consultant told the family that Chloe was unlikely to make it. For 3 weeks, the family went through turmoil, waiting for any glimmer of any positive news. Little did her family know that brave Chloe had actually made a video statement prior to the attempt on her life. She documented the abuse that she had gone through, and her family had no idea. Chloe turned 23 years old in hospital and passed away with her mum by her side. Mark was given just 3 years and 9 months in prison. He is likely to only serve half of this. Chloe's little boy is left without a mum, and her family are understandably heartbroken. Chloe's mum is now asking for help to get legislation changed. Please sign the petition that I've put in my bio, as we desperately need your help. Chloe's mum needs the government to create a specific offence of manslaughter by coercive or controlling behaviour.
Y'all, this has to be one of the most shocking and disturbing cases I've probably ever heard of before. And honestly, this is one of those cases that I don't know, like it's something that I've really been thinking about the whole time I've looked into it. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. So on May 20th, 2015, 3-year-old Jair Sims passed away after his mother pushed him on a swing in the park for 44 straight hours. So that's a day, and that's almost 2 days of pushing him on the swing. Now, I'm not 100% sure all the details behind this case, but I do know that the mother suffered from schizophrenia, and she was having a psychotic episode that particular day, and she was not very much aware of the situation. Like, when you're having psychotic episodes, from what I've heard and looked into, your brain kind of dissociates from the situation. Now, the heartbreaking part about this case is just days before this, Jair Sims' biological father tried to get custody of him because of the situation with his mother and her mental health. And he was basically denied it. I'm not 100% sure why. Like I said, the details behind this case are kind of, mysterious. But the fact that he was put in her care with her mental health being the way it was, and the father not being able to have the child because of this, is just bizarre. And then the fact that the child passed away right when he was trying to get custody. Now, this was a situation where she was not aware of what she was doing, and she was cleared of all charges and basically free to go because of the situation with her psychosis. And poor little baby was basically passed away from hypothermia because he was being, pushed on the swing for almost 2 days straight. I can't imagine this baby, what he went through in that situation, and the torture that must have been for him. Like, this is absolutely heartbreaking. And honestly, I'd never heard of this case before. So let me know in the comments what y'all think about this, and thank you for watching.
The most brutal cartel in Mexico just released a new video, and I'm about to explain it. The video is 1 minute and 31 seconds long. The video is shot in portrait mode, making it kinda hard to make out what's happening. As you play the video, you see 3 men lying on the ground with their hands tied behind their backs, and they are surrounded by at least 5 heavily armed sicarios. The captives also have their shirts pulled over their heads so they can't see. The sicarios kick the men as they plead for their life. One of the captives then cries out, "We are asking you to forgive us. We will cooperate with you guys." A sicario then responds, "Shut the F up with that BS." The man then pleads again, "Seriously guys, we never even messed with you." Another sicario then says, "What do you want me cutting off first then?" Which is met by a response by another sicario saying, "Go ahead and remove someone's head already. Go ahead, go ahead." One of the captives then has his face pushed into the dirt, and you hear him struggling for breath. One of the sicarios then gets a knife out and proceeds to stab the victim in the back of the neck, which results in the victim making noises of pain. The sicario then stops as he realizes it isn't effective. He then turns the victim over slightly and slits his throat. Blood forms on the ground as the victim makes horrible crying and screaming noises, which is just haunting. He continues having his throat cut as the other victims wait their turn. Another sicario then asks for a knife and slits the second victim's throat. He then pushes him back so he's lying on the first victim, who is bleeding out. Blood soaks his white shirt as blood pours out of his neck. The sicario then decides to inflict more pain on the victim before he bleeds out, and it looks like he takes his knife and quickly pokes it into one of the victim's eyes. And you actually hear a popping type sound. The second victim doesn't make as much noise as the first, but you still hear the sounds of blood leaking. The third victim is lying on the ground in a fetal position, attempting to protect himself. However, his head is pulled up, exposing his neck, and a sicario then gets a knife and slices it into his throat. The knife is razor sharp, and it cuts through the flesh and windpipe extremely quickly. until it reaches the victim's spinal cord, which is when the Sicario stops so that the victim can bleed out. And that is where the video concludes. This video is extremely brutal like all Cartel videos, and the screams and cries of the first victim is extremely haunting and nightmare-inducing. Don't go looking for this video for obvious reasons, and you should definitely stay curious on this video. And hopefully this explanation was enough to make you less curious.